What did we do, or how did we prepare? Prior to 2007, Tuscaloosa City did not have a written emergency instant action plan or crisis management plan, whatever the term you want to use for that. We did not have one in writing. We responded to emergencies, of course. The fire department responded to emergencies. The police department responded to emergencies. We have a county EMA and a county emergency operations center, and we helped staff those different emergency support functions within the EOC in the event of an emergency. But as far as having a written plan on dealing with a crisis or a large-scale incident that occurred in our city, we didn't have one. And I didn't feel like that we were devoting enough resources and personnel to that. I felt like that if something happened, we needed to have a coordinated effort using the instant command model and the NIMS model to manage that incident within our city. I talked to Mayor Maddox at the time about that. I had each city department submit a plan to me in writing on their individual departments, trying to convince the city attorney and the city engineer that they needed an emergency plan was not a very easy task. They looked at me like I had three eyes sometime when I was trying to get them to submit that to me. But the reason that I needed that or wanted that, I felt like it was important that they identify the people in their staff or on their staff that were going to be essential to the operation if the event occurred. Identify those people that they were going to allow to go home and allow that wouldn't be part of an incident management team. My goal was to have individuals from each one of those departments to plug into the instant command system in logistics, finance, planning, those kind of functions, and not necessarily have that made up of police and fire. So that was the idea behind it. Each department's plan was then combined into the city overall incident management plan as an annex. We did that. The key thing for us as a city occurred in 2009. I convinced Mayor Maddox that we needed to apply for a program up at the National Fire Academy, integrated emergency management, integrated emergency training that was community specific for the city of Tuscaloosa. There was a long process on how that went. We applied for that training the first time in 2007, got turned down for it. We reapplied for it in 2008. Long story short, we carried 67 people from the Tuscaloosa community, police, fire, people from the sheriff's office, school system, health officer, animal control, power company, 67 people from our city went to Emmitsburg, Maryland. FEMA pays for that training. And there was a scenario developed specifically for us, for the city of Tuscaloosa. We received training from Sunday night till Friday of the next week. We arrived up there on Sunday afternoon, and we began training, and we culminated that training on the next Friday. The scenario involved a tornado that would come through the city of Tuscaloosa. Again, this was in 2009. The tornado would cause enough of a problem for us that it would overwhelm our resources. We had situations built into the scenario like it was coming through the University of Alabama campus, and we were going to have a fire in the dorm. We were going to have riots on campus. We had all kind of scenarios built in that we were going to have to deal with during the week, and it escalated. It started like on Wednesday, we began having thunderstorm warnings, and then on Thursday, it got worse, and then the riots increased, and the protests on the campus increased. So it was designed to overwhelm the system, and it did. But it also allowed us to test our plan that we had written with the personnel that we had decided was going to be involved in the Instant Command system. We were able to actually test that in a scenario. And of course, the question was, is all of that really going to happen? I mean, are you really going to have all of that? Well, in 2011, we didn't have all that. We had worse. When I tell you some of the things that we had to deal with, it was worse for us. Again, we use the NIMS model. I know all of you know what NIMS is, National Instant Management System. It was mandated in 2002 by Congress. All of you are familiar with that, so I won't go into a lot of detail about that. But we wanted to use that model and use the instant command part of that to staff our functions and not the emergency support functions that a lot of EOCs use now. We wanted to use the instant command model to do that. So we went to Emmitsburg, we practiced for a tornado, and again, this is what NIMS, I'll skip over the NIMS part. I guess the important thing to take away from that is, from this is, NIMS is not instant command in itself. It's not just an org chart, and it's scalable to any size event. We use instant command in the fire service every day. When we arrive on the scene at a house fire, the first arriving engine company is going to establish command. And we use command, and then it builds from the ground up, as big as it needs to build. They use instant command in California for the large wildfires that occur out there. That's actually where it got started. I guess most of you probably know that, back in the 70s. So that's the key things, I think, to take away from that is, and it's also applicable for any kind of event, whether it be a tornado or a school shooting or Boston Marathon bombing, whatever the case may be, you can use instant command, and it's scalable for that. What did we do? I know you're going to have a presentation later about planning for major events at Florida State, I think. We certainly do that in Tuscaloosa. We work with the University of Alabama. For every home game, we develop an incident action plan for them. They use the instant command system during the ball games using unified command. We prepare for an instant action plan for them. We have all of our information that we get to them on Wednesday or Thursday before the game. On Saturday, they put that together in an instant action plan, give it to all the personnel that be working the game on Saturday. We also use it for concerts at our amphitheater. We use it, and we have a triathlon event, usually a collegiate triathlon in our city that attracts large numbers of people. And we use it at the air show when the Blue Angels come and stuff like that. What that allows us to do is utilize non-emergency personnel in command roles. We started that with the triathlon first. I suggested that we put the TDOT director as the instant commander at the triathlon, and then I would serve as the operations section chief. That allows them to become familiar with the terminology, the staffing of the positions, how the information flows from one to the other, and it does not have to be emergency personnel to do that. Any one of you could work in the instant command role as a planning section chief or logistics or finance or any one of those roles you could be plugged into. The idea is you're not necessarily going to be working in your everyday role if you get assigned to command. So we wanted to do that. We do that on all of our events, large-scale events. It allows us to build relationships across jurisdiction lines, certainly, and, of course, all disciplines, whether it be the university, Red Cross, school system, whatever the case may be. It allows us to know who all those people are. And then when the emergency does occur, we know who to turn to or who's going to be filling those roles. So there's a comfort level there. Let me say one other thing about, briefly about instant command. And I don't want to harp on this a whole lot. I could talk all day about instant command, but you can use instant command whether it be for an event like this, whether it be for an air show or whatever. The difference and using it for non-emergency events is your command staff is already in place. You use the command staff, the incident commander, the planning section, logistics sections to put your plan together before the event occurs. And then when the event occurs, when the timing is, then the functions are actually carried out, but your command is already in place. If you have an event like a tornado or a bomb goes off or a school shooting, all of that's not done ahead of time. It's done when the officer arrives on the scene and begins that. So it kind of starts from the street level and goes up. It works either way. And then when you have a Boston Marathon type situation, you have the incident action plan and the command staff already in place. And when your event becomes an incident, then you have all those players in place. So it's really good to have that for those kind of events. Tornadoes specifically in Alabama. April 2011 was a 30-year weather event for Alabama. That's what the meteorologist said. The conditions that we had in April in 2011 only occur once like every 30 years, kind of like a 100-year flood event. So what we looked at in April was 64 tornadoes, killed 241 people. This is over a period of about 3 weeks. It's not the entire month, but it's about a 3-week period. 1.5 billion in property damage, 231,000 acres, and 10 million cubic yards of debris. Cubic yards about the size of this podium. We had 1 million cubic yards of debris just in the city limits of Tuscaloosa. 10 million statewide, and we had 1 million of it in our city. Tuscaloosa specifically, Tuscaloosa usually averages about just over a tornado a year. From 1952 to 2012, there's been 69 tornadoes documented come through the state of Alabama, or through Tuscaloosa, killing various numbers of people, but 2011 was the largest, of course. We had 4 significant events in our city from the 15th to the 27th in a 3-week period of time. April 15th was the first tornado that came through Tuscaloosa. It came through in the afternoon, about 3 o'clock or so when it touched down. It was EF3, which is a sizable tornado in itself. It created a lot of damage as far as debris, trees down, roofs, cars, that kind of thing. The timing of that was interesting because of the schools and where they were with all that at that time, lots of decisions to be made there. We also had a concert planned for that day in our new amphitheater. It was a sold-out concert. Around 7,000 people had bought tickets to come to that concert. There was discussions all day whether or not to have the concert, don't have the concert. Thunderstorms would roll through. There was discussion about canceling. The decision was made not to cancel it. The show would go on, and then the tornado come through. We already had resources devoted to the amphitheater event, and now we had response from the fire, police, environmental services, all necessary to make responses to the tornado in the event that had occurred there. The decision was made by the mayor after that to cancel the concert at a cost of around $150,000 to $200,000 to the city. There was no refund for that. But he decided the right thing to do would be to cancel that concert. And I don't know how you folks do it. I mean, y'all are always having to decide whether to keep the kids in the school or send them home or put them on the road or not. I'm not saying that this decision was like that, but it was one of those decisions where cancel it or don't cancel it. So he canceled the concert. City lost the money, but they got it back. I'll tell you that later. The significant thing about this particular concert was Later on that summer, August the 13th to be exact, this band was scheduled to play another event in Indiana. And again, they were trying to decide whether to cancel the concert or not cancel the concert because of thunderstorms in the area. The public safety people wanted to cancel the concert. The concert people wanted the concert to go on. At the last minute, the decision was made to cancel the concert and send everybody for shelter, but they didn't make it to the microphone in time. The stage collapsed, killed 7, injured 58, and the band in both of those was Sugarland. So I guess the lesson learned from this, if you're going to go see Sugarland, make sure it's at an indoor venue and not go see them on an outdoor venue. So that was our first tornado in April 15th. 5 days later, we had another event that come through Tuscaloosa. It was not a tornado. It was determined to be straight line winds, still over 100 miles an hour. More trees down, more roofs damaged. At this point, within 5 days, the city of Tuscaloosa had incurred about $150,000, $200,000 worth of overtime in 5 days for 2 wind events. Again, no serious injuries in either one of those. When the April 15th tornado occurred, I was actually at the Alabama Fire College at a graduation ceremony, and we were all huddled in the hallway, and we could hear it coming over. Blew the ceiling tiles up. We could hear the roar. It didn't come directly over us, but it came probably within 100 yards of us. Then April 27th. April 27th, the conditions were being reported that it was the conditions were just right for large supercell long track tornadoes. I've heard that term most of my adult life, and I really didn't place a real significance on what that meant until this. The first tornado we actually responded to was that morning at 5:30. EF3 is up in the northern part of our county near the Mercedes plant. I don't know if y'all know where that is. Again, lots of damage this time, lots of trees, homes destroyed this time. Firefighter and his whole family were blown out of their house, hospitalized in the 5:30 a.m. storm. A little bit later, a tornado came through the northern part of Alabama. Again, hundreds of people are dying in these tornadoes across Alabama during the month of April. But across the northern part of the state around Huntsville, Limestone County, Athens, up that way. So it's that way all day. And what happens around noon? Phil Campbell, all up in there, the entire towns were destroyed. So this is significant tornadoes in Alabama. But the sun comes out around noon. Y'all know what that means. Started getting worse for us as far as Tuscaloosa. We're watching tornadoes now building with intensity as they're coming into Alabama. Around 3 o'clock or so, a tornado came through Coleman, Alabama, through their downtown area, hit their hospital. A lot of people killed, a lot of injuries, and we're all watching that. And then around 4:45 or so, the radar picks up a large tornado on the ground coming toward Tuscaloosa and that vicinity, so we're all watching that and monitoring it. Mayor Maddox had decided around 3 o'clock or so after the Coleman tornado to send the non-essential personnel home from City Hall. Again, the forecasters are predicting really bad tornadoes, chance for tornadoes. The good thing for us is the schools were already out. That's a good thing. Because of all the predictions and the storms that had occurred earlier, a lot of businesses closed. After City Hall closed, a lot of businesses started closing. A lot of people that would have been on the streets, the tornado came through Tuscaloosa at 5 o'clock, just after 5 o'clock. In most communities, just after 5 o'clock, there are hundreds, if not thousands of people on the road. Our roads, with the exception of the Interstate 5920, were almost deserted. Had not these warnings been out like they were, there's no doubt in my mind that we would have had numbers very similar to Joplin, Missouri, where hundreds of people would have been killed, but they weren't. Our instant command team had stood up around 3 with reluctance from the mayor, believe it or not. Again, the city of Tuscaloosa had already incurred about $250,000 worth of overtime in the past 3 weeks, with no chance of any reimbursement for that from FEMA. So he's thinking, what are the chances that we're going to have another tornado come through our city in a 3-week period? But he did the right thing. He stood command up. And after they were able to get out of the basement, the command structure was in place. The next slide, I hope it doesn't start. There's the camera. Tuscaloosa, like most cities nowadays, all the TV stations have cameras on top of their tall buildings so you can see the weather coming in and all that kind of thing. 99% of the time when we see that, we don't see anything but a lot of rain. We don't see that. In fact, this is the first time I've ever seen that coming into our city. But that's what the forecasters, all the TV stations had this view. So everyone that had not taken shelter, that still had power, when they saw this, they were taking shelter. And they went to their place of safety. Unfortunately, even some of those died or were seriously injured. But lives were saved, I think, because of this. That facility that you see right there is a B.F. Goodrich tire and rubber plant. And so I can get this to work. There were different reports from the meteorologists about the track that this tornado was going to take because it's so large. The first reports that we were getting had it tracking south of where it actually ended up going. And everyone that looked at it thought it was coming directly at them. It's really strange to try to figure out which way it's going. But everybody thought it was coming right at them. But it wasn't. It missed this plant right here. It actually tracked this way. I got a 3-minute video here of a weather forecaster.
This is a large tornado on the ground. Please take cover immediately. This is a very violent tornado. We lost the shot again. It's going to come back. We will get it back. This is a very, very dangerous situation. Take our warning right now. It is now churning through the city of Tuscaloosa. My God, look at that. That thing is huge. We got power flashes going on with it as well. Folks, this is a violent tornado. This is really violent. Okay, look at that. There's the tornado. It's now moving right up I-20. This is Skyland Boulevard. You see something like this out on the Great Plains, the Central Plains.
This is live.
So, all right, hang on with that shot, Lee. My God, look at that thing. It's huge. That is a big tornado that is headed towards the city of Tuscaloosa. You got warning if you were in the city northward, the university. Hang in there. We're going to get through this. I promise you, we're going to get you through it. It's just got to pass. We have large debris now flying up off the backside of this tornado. If you're in a safe place, you're going to be okay. We're going to get you through this. Keep us turned up. This is a massive, violent tornado. My gosh, look at the debris. The debris field is absolutely huge, and it continues to strengthen. This tornado is a wedge tornado, multiple vortices on this thing. This is as violent as it gets when it comes to a tornado.
Holt, you need to start getting in your safe place as well. Holt.
Okay, we are looking northward now. This is headed towards the university. It is bearing down on the university. I believe that is DCH. That is the hospital there. All right, freeze that shot. We lost the shot.
Let's go back to maps.
Okay, it's going to come back. The tornado.
All right, we got it.
Okay, we're losing power flashes there. Oh my gosh, this is a large tornado, folks. This is a large tornado. So, all right. That's going to move right across McFarland, the university. We're watching it live as you are. This is a rare
Mall.
and historic day for not only Alabama, but for us at CBS 42. You're watching a tornado plow through the city of Tuscaloosa. That is, we're with them. We're going to get through it. All right, for those of you anywhere from, all right, we're going to get the shot back here in just a minute. For those of you in North Jefferson, or excuse me, let me correct that. Any of you in North Tuscaloosa, now northeast of Alabama, over William Bacon Oliver Lake, this tornado is churning northeast very quickly. It's past Bryce Hospital. It is past the University Medical Center and Student Health Center. It is now headed towards, let me pull up some of the locations here. I'm going to try to get Holt. It's headed your way. Holt, this is a, I'm going to say this is an EF5. EF4 to EF5, this is a violent, violent tornado.
I don't know how many times he said large or huge, but that's the only words he could think of to describe it. And I think most of us were thinking the same thing. One of the things I want to point out about this, and a lesson learned for me and I think for most of us that was in command and responded to this tornado. I think we have a tendency sometime to think that we know what is going to happen based on our previous experience or what to expect based on our previous experience. We had already had 3 wind events in Tuscaloosa prior to this. We had a tornado come through Tuscaloosa in 2000 that killed, I think, 11 people. Again, I went through a tornado in Jefferson County in the 90s and one in Center Point in the 70s. And I thought that I knew what to expect when a tornado came through your community. My experience was with tornadoes that, at least in Alabama that I was familiar with, that they would come in and they would touch down over here. And there'd be a lot of damage right here. And then nothing here. Everything's perfect. But then over here, more damage. So that's kind of what I was expecting when the first reports started coming in from damage. We started getting reports coming in from the Rosedale community. Significant damage, fatalities. Immediately we were getting fatalities. A small child was the first report that we got of fatalities. I'm thinking, okay, Rosedale's pretty badly torn up. Then we got another report from a little bit further down the path, and I'm going to show you the path in a minute. Forest Lake area, same thing, damage. Then Alberta, damage. What I didn't realize, still hadn't wrapped my mind around that, was, and you saw it on the video, it never lifted. We came into the city like that, and it left the city like that same way. It was 1,200 feet wide. That first video you saw when it was coming to the city, it was 1,200 feet wide. When it exited the city, when it exited the city, I can't see that thing. Right up there in the corner, it was 6,000 feet wide. It was over a mile wide when it left, causing significant amount of damage. So what I didn't realize is in the command center and the reports that I were getting from my people in the field, that the destruction was not just in those places we were getting reports from, because that's where we had people. But the damage and the destruction and the fatalities and the injuries were all along that path. We had 43 fatalities initially. We ended up, at the end of the final count was 53. There was over 1,200 people treated at the hospital that night. And by the way, the hospital was on generator power with no water. They treated 1,200 patients. I have no earthly idea how many we treated. We were moving people on doors, countertops, anything flat. The only way we could get them to any kind of aid was mostly by carrying them. All the streets were blocked, power lines down. You just couldn't drive a vehicle very far at all. If you did, you'd have a flat tire. Hundreds of people, nasty wounds, a lot of broken bones, a lot of puncture injuries, a lot of head injuries, those kind of things. And nearly every one of those were covered in mud or debris of some type. That compounded our situation, and it compounded their injuries later on. A lot of infection kind of issues. But I tell you that because the hospital was spared. It was within a couple of 100 yards of the path. I'll show you in just a second. And there were no trees, buildings, or anything left to stand in the way of people being able to see the hospital. So those that had broken arms or severe puncture wounds or something like that, a large number of them just walked to the hospital because they could, and that was the only way they could get there. We ended up transferring a lot of patients to Birmingham, specifically Children's Hospital. They have a level 1 trauma center, so a lot of the children got moved up there. The 35th right there, that's where it came into the city. That was the first building that was hit. And I'm going to try to talk a little faster. Remember all the stuff that we built into the scenario in Emmitsburg to overwhelm our system. There was a city-owned building right there where that 35 is. It's a 300,000 square foot building. It housed a warehouse space for us and the police. We had a mass casualty trailer in there. It also housed environmental services. All the garbage trucks, trash trucks, recycle trucks were in that facility. But most importantly, the EMA and the EOC was in that building. First building hit, 300,000 square foot, it's totally destroyed. All the personnel in the EOC had to extricate themselves from the basement of that building. I know I heard somebody talking this morning about hardened facilities and where to send the kids and all that kind of thing. I think Enterprise was here last year talking about construction. We thought these people were safe. They thought they were safe. They said the first indication they were in trouble when they were watching on the cameras and a police car flew by about 7 feet off the ground. And they knew that they were in trouble, and then the building started coming down on them. So we lost our EOC within 2 minutes of the tornado coming to the city. And of course, our EOC, like most of y'all's EOC, that's where your Red Cross people are, that's where your Salvation Army people are, that's where your sheltering people are. All those support functions that you're expecting to get are in the EOC usually. Now, a little bit further along, right in there, was a radio tower for police and fire. Gone. No communication for police and fire on the main radio frequency. Right here, Salvation Army. The entire building, they house the homeless. In a good day, now they don't have a building at all. Right here, right in this area, University Place School. Significant damage. They just got back into that school this year. That was in 2011. Let's see, what else? Right here, guess what? Red Cross. Direct hit. Right about there, fire station number 4. Just east of that on 25th Avenue, Alberta Police Precinct. Right about 25th Avenue, Alberta Elementary School, totally destroyed. University Place School, significant damage. They just got back in this year. Alberta's still not in. That building's still under construction. I'll show you some pictures of that later. I had a lot of pictures. I had to take most of them out because I just didn't have time. The scenario that we had in Emmitsburg had the tornado going this way. All the tornadoes in Tuscaloosa, every one that they've documented, always come from the southwest to the northeast. That's always the track. The April 15th tornado tracked down further to the south, down in here. And I can't see that, but it was south of that. Right where University Boulevard and University and Paul Bryant Drive is the hospital right there. So you can see how close it was. University campus right here in this area. Stadium is back here. Very close to coming through the campus. If it had been a totally different story. So that's what we had. We had essential services that we lost. County ELC I talked about. Police and fire main frequency. That picture is of I think that's our mass casualty trailer that was in the building. Salvation Army, Red Cross, all of those gone, along with the ELC. What did we do? We had already set up instant command. I talked about that. Search and rescue was, of course, our primary focus. I already touched on the number of injuries that we had. We did utilize the Alabama Mutual Aid System. We were able to do that because we were familiar with the system because we participated in the mutual aid system. We had deployed firefighters and police officers in past hurricanes, so we knew about the system. I was able to deal with the Montgomery State EOC directly and request assistance from them. We were able to do that and get some resources. We had volunteers by the thousands, and a lot of those were neighbors, of course, like you can imagine. And if you think about it, one of the lessons, again, another lesson learned is those people had something that we didn't have, and that's intelligence. They knew who their neighbors were. They knew if they were home. They knew who could get themselves out and who couldn't, where to search in the home. So they were able to do that. They were able to do that, and they were willing to do that, but guess what? They didn't have anywhere else to go anyway. In most cases, their cars were destroyed and they couldn't drive, so they really couldn't go anywhere, so they were invaluable to us. We had all of our firefighters deployed. Firefighters that came in, we had them deployed. We had the neighboring firefighters and the volunteer firefighters. We had police officers. All of those people were out, but the volunteers. And then the university students. The university students stepped up big time. Later on, they cooked 50,000 meals. The schools were dismissed anyway. Universities decided to cancel classes for the rest of the year. It was near the end of the term anyway, so they just canceled them. So the Greek students had all these meals left. They cooked them and gave them away to the volunteers. They raised over $200,000. Just a lot of. I'll touch more about the volunteers in just a second, hopefully. Again, I talked about fire station number 4. That is fire station number 4. You can see right there. And that's engine 4. That engine was actually in the building when the damage occurred. That's the damage that happened. We talked about the Curry building and how it affected us. We had a loss of water pressure on Thursday morning. Everybody assumed that it was because there was a large water main break somewhere. That wasn't it. The challenge we had was trying to find out where that water leak was occurring because one of our water tanks was almost totally empty. On top of everything else we had going on, we didn't have any water in one section of town. That, of course, affects fire response. But it also caused us to issue boiling water emergency. But it ended up being a large number of small leaks. The way we identified those was we had garbage workers that didn't have any trucks. So we paired them up, put them on golf carts and any other way we could get them through the city going lot by lot, and that we were able to utilize them in a different role that they were unaccustomed to identify that. Water treatment facility was heavily damaged and out of service. Another challenge that we had. Quick story about the firefighters at fire station number 4. Early that morning, because of all the predictions of the tornadoes, the rookie firefighter decided to put a mattress in the bathroom. That was where they were going to seek shelter. I don't know if y'all know much about firefighting. I'm sure police officers know about police officers and how rookies are treated when they come up with a really good idea like that. But this rookie firefighter takes a mattress, puts it in the bathroom, in the shower. This is our oldest fire station. So the Engine 4 was actually out on another call when the tornado warning was issued. Deputy Chief ordered them back to the station. They got back in. They heard the reports like we did from the weather forecaster that the tornado was headed down Skyland Boulevard. That's our fire station number 7. Their thought was fire station 7 getting ready to get hammered. Then they start hearing the tornado. They all, 4 firefighters, rush into the shower, pull the mattress down on top of them. And the captain's bigger than me. He said, you should have seen 4 firefighters in their turnout gear getting under one little mattress. But they were all under there when the tornado came, lifted the roof off. And so they survived. They exited the building, immediately began to help folks. As soon as they got out, they were able to get a lady that was down, that was on top of a apartment building that was then a debris pile. Her husband was unfortunately killed. They gave a really good radio report about what they saw. The captain requested everything, including the National Guard. But guess what? Nobody heard it. We didn't have any radio communications. So only a few people heard that. So, and I'm trying to hurry. A couple of pictures. That's the hospital you see in the top left there. Of course, the street didn't look that good right after the storm. That's after the street had been cleared. That's the radio tower for the police and fire main frequency, built to withstand 100-mile-an-hour winds. This is the entrance to the EOC. You can see that police car, the weather forecaster that was in the EOC in the basement. That door right there goes down into the basement where the EOC was located. Most areas, again, challenges for us. The command staff was unreasonable, not just because of the radio frequencies. We eventually got those back. But while we were communicating with them, again, we had no way to access them. They were pretty much on their own. They just didn't realize it once they got out there. We had the Southern Link radios, or two-way radios that we could talk on, but once one person had the air, no one else could get it. And so when they did get the air and was able to talk, they tended to talk for a really long time. Another lesson learned for us, make sure that your people in the field give very short, succinct messages and get off the air, because there's a lot of people wanting to talk on that. We didn't do that. We had a tendency to, once we got it, we wanted to keep it. So that's a lesson learned for us. Again, a lot of lessons we learned. Number of people needing help overwhelmed the system at all times. You have to consider most of our emergencies that we respond to are over in 24 hours, for the most part. Even the bad ones are over in 24 hours or 48 hours. In this case, multi-casualty bad event for us is a bus wreck on the interstate where there's 20 people hurt. Our first arriving engine company that arrived in Rosedale, with 4 firefighters on the engine company, had hundreds of people coming up to them. Not dozens, hundreds. And the first one that came up to them had a small child that was deceased. The persons of concern, I try to talk about that a little bit later. That was a huge problem for us later on. Let me say this, too, about a lesson learned for us. We're a well-trained fire department, we believe. We believe we were well-trained to deal with this kind of emergency. But I don't know that you can, and I've never been in war, but I would try to equate what our first guys arriving on the scene in these neighborhoods saw to like somebody that's in war with all the chaos and the large numbers of people going on. Your ability to make very quick, rational decisions is not there. I mean, you have to fall back on your training, but you really can't expect your people to do what they do in a situation like they're in every day, because this is not a situation that they're in every day. Another lesson learned for us. I'll go through this pretty quickly, but you can see the kind of debris that we were dealing with. 5,300 residential structures. The thing about, again, 12% of the city of Tuscaloosa was destroyed in a matter of minutes. 61% of those were rental, and the median income on those were less than $28,000. So what happens is, even now, to build those homes back costs more than it cost to build them originally. When it costs more for the landlords to build them back, what are they going to do? Charge more rent. The people that was paying that can't afford it. So affordable housing in Tuscaloosa is now really still a significant problem for us. Student housing is not a problem. All the developers that come to Tuscaloosa want to build student housing because parents have money to pay for that. But the folks that didn't have the housing or had affordable housing, in a lot of cases, don't have it anymore. Debris removal is a huge thing. Again, it's one of those things that it causes a lot of issues. Again, we had 1 million cubic yards. In addition to the residential, we had 356 commercial. The thing about the commercial structures is I've forgotten how many jobs were lost in a matter of minutes in the city of Tuscaloosa because of the businesses that were damaged. Some businesses left our city and didn't come back. We knew that was going to happen. We had prepared for that. Another thing about debris removal that hopefully you won't all have to deal with, you have to decide who's going to remove it and how you're going to remove it. Hopefully you can make those decisions ahead of time, but you can't always. There are advantages for both, Army Corps of Engineers or private contractors. City of Tuscaloosa originally decided to use private contractors. And then we found out we were going to have to do all the background checks. We were going to have to pay for the money up front. And there was a large amount of money leaving the City of Tuscaloosa bank account right away. So the decision was made to use the Army Corps of Engineers. Neither one of those are wrong. Corps of Engineers, I think, cost more a little bit. Then you have all kind of issues about private property or not private property, or whether it has to be demolished and when it has to be demolished, and whether it's on the right of way. All those have different requirements. Those are lessons that we're learned and we're still learning them. I know that doesn't pertain to you all too much. Whether or not to hire a consultant or not, that's something y'all might want to think about. In most cases, you can charge their fee back to the FEMA for reimbursement. They'll tell you whether you can or not. But the reality you are going to have, probably all of you even in the school system, is these folks, these folks right there, the FEMA representatives, they're going to have to be dealt with. And they're going to have to be dealt with all the time. And they tend to change personnel, and someone's going to have to stand up and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. Consultants can do that for you. More lessons learned. Staff big, staff early. Those are lessons we learned as far as the city and our instant command. We thought we had a really good plan. But again, most of our scenarios that we had ever practiced, most of the tabletops that I've ever done, most of the emergencies that I've ever been involved with were over in a short time frame. When you have an event like we had, or that some of you had with hurricanes, or even school shootings where you're going over more than one operational period, you have to factor in that you're going to have large numbers of staff that's going to have to be available to do that. Staff them 3 or 4 deep if you can. Of all the things that we did following the tornado, the humanitarian things are the ones we got the most compliments about, passing out water and putting tarps on roofs. Out of the hundreds of patients we treated, another lesson learned. Whatever the resources you need to get to do that, that pays big dividends for you. Social media, when we did our exercise up in Emmitsburg, we barely touched on social media. Social media was huge for us in the tornado. We all know how many people Facebook reach and Twitter and all that kind of thing. Mayor Maddox was using it to get word out about aid stations, where to go get water, where the FEMA trailers were, all those kind of things. And we talk about how many, if you think about how many people that reach in a very short amount of time, that's a large number. But then when all the TV people pick up that same message and they put it out, now all of a sudden you're reaching thousands and thousands of people. Mayor Maddox now has 2 people working on social media, Facebook and Twitter every day, almost all day. That's almost their full-time job. Who would have thought that? I wouldn't have thought that. Another lesson learned for us, social media, huge for you. I can imagine in your situation where social media could be your friend, but it also can be your enemy. In one situation for me, and I could tell a lot of stories. I don't have time to tell all of them. But I got blasted by some fire chief in Texas on social media for not allowing him to assist us. Well, he shows up at one of our battalion chiefs with his scuba diving team and his dogs and all these people. Well, here I am, where you want me? I want you to go home. I didn't ask for you. I don't have anywhere for you to work. You don't have any safety equipment. Your dogs are not certified. We can't let your dogs work with our dogs because the dogs don't work well together. One of the things we were told, do not allow dogs that have not been certified to work with these other dogs. You don't have a veterinarian. We don't need a scuba divers, by the way. You know, we don't have anybody underwater. So anyway, I get blasted on social media for being rude to him. I never even talked to him. But anyway, it can also work against you as well. Just be aware of that. I'm preaching to the choir here when I talk about this last one. You folks are probably the best in the world at critical incident stress management. I know y'all do that and y'all think of that right away first thing. It was a lesson learned for us. We decided on Friday, tornado was on Wednesday, we decided on Friday that our folks had seen more in a couple of days than most of them would ever see their entire life or their entire career in the fire service. They'd experienced things that they would probably never see again. We pulled our chaplain that's a captain, we pulled him off the line, put him in charge of critical incident stress management for all of our personnel and the police personnel. And by Sunday, we had folks from as far away as California in to help him with that. So that's a big deal. I know y'all do it all the time. But don't forget your workers, not just your children, because they're going to be seeing an awful lot of things too that most folks won't see. Again, more lessons learned. I talked about this a little bit already. There's really no time to do anything other than react. I guess the biggest understatement I can make right here is that something you planned on won't be there. We had a lot of things we had planned on as far as the Red Cross, Salvation Army, EOC, being able to talk on radio, all those things. We had planned on those being available to us. They weren't. So when you're thinking about when you're planning, plan on what you're going to do if you don't have an EOC. Plan on what you're going to do if you don't have some of these resources. Lesson learned for us. Field commanders need to know where they fit because, like I said, our commanders were in the field, and we had 3 different area commands, but they really didn't know what each of the other areas were experiencing. When they were asking for resources, they couldn't comprehend, like me, that it wasn't just those 3 areas that was affected. They didn't know that. We needed to let them know that. I think that would have been better for us if we had. We didn't. Delegate, that sounds easy, but a lot of people, when they have a situation like this, they tend to want to do it themselves, and you can't. You can't do everything. We had a lot of folks that learned that. Try to resist sending most of your resources to first calls. Our first calls came into the Rosedale area, and we sent 4 or 5 trucks, not knowing what was happening further down the path. Try not to do that. Set response priorities, we had done that, and it all flew out the window. We had a captain we had sent to dispatch to prioritize the calls that we felt like were going to be coming in different areas. This one has injuries, this one doesn't. All that went out the window for us. It's something you can try to do, but we weren't able to do all that. The resources are coming, those you ask for and those you don't. I've been in the fire service for 40 years, and I've heard story after story about people self-dispatching. I told you one story, whether it be Oklahoma City or Columbine or Aurora Theater, you know, the shootings up in Connecticut. People just want to come and help. I knew that that was a possibility. We had made arrangements for those people to report to specific areas. We didn't do the credentialing early like we should have, primarily because we had such a large area. We had 6 miles to try to, you can't establish a perimeter over a 6-mile area. And what was happening was the people that were coming in were going directly to those locations, to that battalion chief or wherever, and we had no control over that. Those that we were asking for, we were able to actually put to work. No one can do it all. Realize you have people below you can depend on. You know, that sounds easy, and why did I put that up there? Again, we go through every day, I think, in our everyday life, thinking that, oh, Joe over there, he's pretty good, but he can't really do this. Or if I need somebody to do X, I'm going to get this guy over here because this one can't do it. But that's not the case. We had people that were doing more than what was asked for them all the time. Mayor spokesperson for the city. You know, lesson that we learned, and I think we probably learned it before, but when you have a disaster like that, the people in the community want to know a few things. They want to know what's happened, of course. They want someone to tell them. They want someone to tell them what we're doing about it. What are we doing to correct it? What are you in the school system doing? What are you telling your parents is going to make it, you know, how are you correcting the situation that's occurred? Our mayor was the one that did that. And then finally, they want to know, when's it going to get better? They always want to know when it's going to get better. You can't have more than one person doing that. And I know that that sounds easy, but we kind of learned that on the fly. I don't know if I get out of the office and circulate among the troops. The first time I actually got out in the field to actually survey, I had actually started out on Wednesday to try to get down to one of the locations to see what was going on. I couldn't get there. I was having to walk. It was going to take me a long time. I decided that I needed to get back to the command center. That was my job, was to be in command. What we found out was people like me, people like the police chief, the mayor, they really needed to be out in the field among the troops with the people that were doing something. That's our job too. The people that's doing the work for you, they need to know that you care about them too. And you also need to do some recognizance on your own. And you need to listen to them while you're out there, not just walk by. And you know, one of my favorite, I know I heard the gentleman this morning talking about leaders and his definition and all that. One of my favorite ones is Colin Powell, and he says the commander in the field is always right and the rear echelon's wrong, unless proven otherwise. I think we learned that from the tornado. If we didn't already know that, we learned it. Again, the leadership style become exaggerated. I heard him also talk about leadership style. Under stressful situations like that, whatever your style is, becomes exaggerated. I had to caution one of my deputy chiefs more than once. You know, one day this is all going to be over and you're still going to have to be here working with these people. You really need to remember that because it's going to come back. They're not going to forget it, and they're not going to let you forget it. So it was just the whole magnitude of it that exaggerated his already a little bit of aggressive style. And everyone's accountable all the time. Do an after-action review. Learn from it. Kind of elementary, I know. Re-review the policies. And perpetual optimism is a force multiplier in situations like this. Our Mayor Maddox, is a really good example of that. But again, by getting out in the field, circulating among the troops, it really is a force multiplier. This is Alberta Elementary on the left, immediately after the tornado. And you can see this is where it is today. Not quite complete yet, but you can see the new structures coming up. As you can see, there was nothing left. The entire area of Alberta, this is where the tornado was a mile wide. The entire area of our Alberta looked like that. That's where our fire station number 4 was. No trees. There's over 5,000 trees, bigger than 30 inches in diameter. That's a lot of trees, a lot of big trees. University Place, I have a picture of University Place also. University Place was damaged to the point to where they couldn't occupy it for a couple of years. As you can see, this section's gone. This one, the roof's gone, you can't tell it, or the second floor's gone. But then over here, you can see where that's been built back. They now have a safe room, of course. Everything gets built in Tuscaloosa now has a safe room. You heard all that. I think I'm almost out of time. I'm a little bit, I'm late starting, I think, but I think I'm about right on. Whoever's watching the clock for me, I'm okay. Just a little bit about recovery. City of Tuscaloosa spent $7 million out of the reserve fund initially. To date, we've only gotten about $4 million of that back. We feel like that's probably going to be our tab, is about $3 million it cost us after it's all said and done. Again, I don't know what your budget's like, but that's a significant amount of money any way you look at it. To date, we've received $60 million in CDBG funds, and the state of Alabama has received $73 million. So, you know, our portion of that, $60 million. Again, CDBG funds are not like they just, I know y'all know this, but they don't just write you a check and say, here's $60 million, go spend it. That's not the way you do it. It takes a lot of planning and effort to do that. We've also gotten $7.6 million in ADECA funds. 2011, this is 2011. There was $400 million budgeted for disasters nationwide in 2011. Compare that to 2005, where the state of Mississippi received $5 billion. The economy and the budget of the United States government is not what it once was. And you can see that in disaster funding. I actually had this somewhere else and I had missed it, so I put it back in. Tracking your volunteer hours immediately. You need to assign someone to do that because you can use your volunteer hours to offset your match for your FEMA. But you have to track it and you have to have. The other thing that I didn't stress that I will stress for you, because we rarely go over more than one operational period, if you will assign someone to do your documentation unit leader, to look at the paperwork, your project worksheets, your 204s, all those kind of things, your forced labor accounts. If you'll look at those at the end of the operational period, it will save you time and money probably from having to come back 3-4 weeks later and try to match those up. If your operational period is 12 hours, assign someone to look at those at the end when they turn them in. Because it's easy then to say, well, it says on your forced labor account that you work 6 hours. But it says over here on the equipment used, you use equipment for 8 hours. Those don't match. Those need to match. It's easier to do that at the end of the operational period, even if it takes a few minutes, and then you're current. When it comes time to send those into FEMA, send them in. In our case, we didn't do that. We thought we did really good in that we assigned somebody to do that for us on Sunday. Well, the tornado started on Wednesday. We had firefighters working around the clock. So now they've got to go back and try to figure out they're using a chainsaw for how many hours and hours and hours, and trying to match those up. We got behind early. So, again, most of our emergencies don't go over multiple operational periods. So remember that, and I know y'all can do that as far as the volunteer hours and that kind of thing, track those. I don't know where I'm at on time, but that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer those. Nope. Roll Tide.